Hi everyone, welcome to Bear in Mind's gaming show. This week it's the reactions to last week's Xbox Game Showcase. Lots to talk about, as was predictable. Plenty of negative reactions on the internet, plenty of positives as well. But for two people such as myself and James, who aren't necessarily the biggest of Xbox gamers, this was quite an interesting showcase, to say the least. James, highlight of the show. Let's get it straight out there. What was
Obsidian?
Obsidian,
yeah. I mean, I'm an Obsidian fan. I'm glad they have a company behind them now that has the money to spend on them.
Yeah.
Because I think Obsidian has had to do a lot of work for hire to kind of just survive.
Yep.
And I think under Microsoft, they could genuinely flourish.
And
having come for Bethesda's Fallout crown with Outer Worlds late last year, it feels like they're not going to stop there, and they're going to go for that Elder Scrolls crown as well, with a first-person fantasy RPG set in their own Pillars of Eternity universe.
Yeah.
And I have no doubt that they can do that style and genre of video game better than Bethesda can.
I think
difficult.
Exactly. I think let's be perfectly honest here. Bethesda have sat on their laurels now for arguably 2 generations.
That's not fair. We got Skyrim in the PS3 generation. I know you're not the biggest Elder Scrolls and Bethesda fan anyway, but credit where credit's due to Skyrim. It is what it is, and it's well loved.
I also
think we're more likely to see Skyrim on PS5 before we see another Elder Scrolls game. So
oh hell yeah, yeah, definitely more likely to see Skyrim on PS5
and Xbox.
I think if anything, we're more likely to see Oblivion as well before we see the brand new one. Because I think now, as you said, now that Obsidian has got the financial backing and to an extent the freedom that brings, they are going to show what Bethesda Game Studios, not necessarily Bethesda the publisher, but Bethesda Softworks itself, should be doing.
Obsidian also has personality, and I think that's what sets their. You saw it in New Vegas, you see it in Outer Worlds. They're creating these open world first person RPGs, but the characters in them are fleshed out. They have personality. Like I need to get back into Outer Worlds because I love what I played of it, but something came up and I stopped kind of playing it. But like, there's a side quest where you're trying to get one of your party a date. And I was so invested in just going to the bar with her and kind of trying to get her the person she's interested in. Because those characters were fleshed out and well voice acted, and it's something you just don't tend to get, for me at least, from Bethesda games. Bethesda games feel like both Fallout and Elder Scrolls, for me, especially as time shifted on, because in the earlier days I don't think this was as much of a problem, but as we got better voice acting in video game, better writing in video games, Bethesda games gave you all the stuff to do, but no one to, the worlds just feel hollow.
Yeah, they're almost like playing an MMO, but if you don't have an internet connection.
Yeah.
Why
Obsidian? Obsidian doesn't have that problem.
Yeah, I mean, Obsidian has very much moved along with the times. Like they've, you look at, I think, obviously they are the closest parallel to Bethesda in a way. But then you look at other open world game studios, and like people like BioWare or people like even Rockstar. Like you look
Obsidian
at the level
Hail,
that they've gone to.
Going back to where BioWare come from, Obsidian hail from that same kind of, because I think there's always two kinds of PC Western RPG. You had your ones that were very clearly built off of the back of Dungeons and Dragons, your Baldur's Gates, your Icewind Dales, Neverwinter Nights, and that's what both Obsidian and even the original Fallout, your isometric RPGs, and that is where both BioWare and Obsidian come up through that style of game making. And then you had the stuff companies like Bethesda were putting out, and I forget the company that made it, but your Ultima franchise as well, long dormant franchise, but your first person PC RPGs.
I mean, I think even to an extent, you could put Bethesda in that same camp as like BioWare and Obsidian to a level, because it's almost like a creator and adventure thing, in that like they've given you a framework that you then.
As someone who grew up playing both genres of games, so on PC, right? They always felt like they were quite different to each other. Like one was way more story focused than the other. Like your BioWare games are trying to tell you a story. They're giving you dialogue choices and choices within that story, but they are still trying to tell you a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Yeah.
While your Elder Scrolls games are very much like, here is a map. There's things happening in this map. Have at it. I mean, going back to tabletop RPGs, I guess it's the difference between a fully kind of a game master giving you a fully kind of sandbox world where you just go and raid dungeons, and a game master giving you a more narrative experience. Both, I think, are worthwhile if one isn't necessarily for me. And I think Obsidian, with these first-person games they're making, are maybe striking a balance between the two. But that was the teaser from Obsidian more than it was. And if they also showed more of their new game, Grounded, which you can play right now on early access on Xbox if you've got Game Pass, which is basically Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, the video game.
Which I'd be tempted with.
I need to give it a go. I've installed it, so I do need to give it a try.
It looks really good. I think they've and I like the humour that came with the trailer for it. They know exactly what they're doing when it comes to marketing as well. I think, and I mean, we briefly touched on this in some off-camera conversation, but I even almost thought that them saying from the game studio that does nothing like this at all was also a sly little dig at Bethesda, because this is essentially their equivalent of Fallout 76, because it's their multiplayer.
In a way,
yeah. Like they've just, instead of taking one of their beloved franchises and doing a half-assed something with it, they've gone, you know what? Let's just do something different. Let's just have a laugh, see what happens. Obviously, the expansion to Outer Worlds was shown as well, which isn't technically them. It's one of their kind of like partner studios that's done the expansion.
It's also obviously still part of the deal Obsidian has with Privateer. Yeah. So it isn't an Xbox exclusive game in any way. It's going to be on Outer Worlds on all. On all consoles.
Which, again, I mean, something we've speculated in the PlayStation one, I think, that potentially any future sequels to Outer Worlds, assuming they actually make one, because it might be that Microsoft encouraged them to make something similar but not technically within the same franchise.
It is a fully Obsidian-owned IP.
So
Funded by Privateer, but Obsidian own the IP.
So it could be really a case of once this initial game and any DLC for Privateer, for the Privateer funded one is done and dusted with, that a proper sequel will be Microsoft funded. But again, I mean, I don't see a reason why. Again, this is pure speculation, but I don't see a reason why maybe at some point it couldn't be a timed exclusive with Xbox.
Yeah.
It may as well take advantage of it being made by an Xbox studio, have it 12 months exclusively on Xbox, and then let the PlayStation community have their hands on it.
Worth noting as well, the expansion they announced, not part of Game Pass, so you would need to buy that. You still don't necessarily have to buy Outer Worlds because that's on Game Pass.
Yeah.
So you can get the base game for free, but you have to buy the DLC if you want to play that.
I suppose that's fair enough. Especially as it's technically not their game as well, like as in Microsoft, not Obsidian, but like technically it's still funded by someone else.
Be honest, I wouldn't have any complaints if it was only ever based games on Game Pass. Right, I feel that would still be a very fair deal for what you're getting.
I think going forward, like if we look at it, because obviously pretty much everything they showed at this conference was Game Pass related. I think going forward, if we look maybe 3 or 4 years down the line, it probably is going to be predominantly Xbox Studios, Xbox first party games, whether it's literally a first party or whether it's like like with the Predator Hunting Grounds on PlayStation, it's a PlayStation Studios game made by an external unit that appear on Game Pass.
I still think we're going to see a lot of third party on Game Pass.
I think we will, in the same way that we get, say, Games with Gold free monthly games, and you get PlayStation Plus free monthly games. Once they're old enough, or if they're small enough as well, like say if it's an indie game or something like that, or a smaller studio, then sure, fire it out.
You look at what's slowly been creeping up on there throughout this year so far, and it's very clear that Microsoft has been buddying up, at least potentially paying some decent chunks of money to both Sega and Square Enix.
Yes.
Because the Yakuza franchise from Sega is slowly going. That's the years that has been. You play them on PC, but console space, it's been like that's a PlayStation game, right?
Yeah, and I mean, like with Phantasy Star Online too, going to Game Pass later in the year, which is a very weird thing to see there, but it could just be part of a larger deal with Sega.
The Yakuza games have all 2 of them are up on there now, and they've announced that over the year the rest will show up. The new one for the next gen consoles, that's going to be on Game Pass from launch. Or you can now play the entirety of Kingdom Hearts via Game Pass.
Yeah.
It's got both compilations and Kingdom Hearts 3, and some of the Final Fantasy games are slowly going up on there as well. So I think we will still see strong third-party support for it as well. Now, you might see if Sony sort out or alter or shift PS Now into a more tenable package, you may see the same kind of deals there as well. In regards to, and I think we spoke about Game Pass for a lot last week, and I think it's difficult to talk about Xbox and not talk about Game Pass, because even at the event, right, they were so on board with the message of, hey, this stuff, Game Pass, right?
Yeah.
Everything's seen at that event, bar... Well, their wording was available on Game Pass or free to play. Because there's a couple of non-Game Pass free-to-play online stuff shown, but the bulk of what they showed is going to be on Game Pass.
Yeah.
And I think it's difficult to talk about Xbox and not talk about that. And I think the next generation. I don't think by the end of the next generation of video games we're going to be remotely in the same space we are. I mean, the same happens every generation, but I think we are getting closer to the end of the hardware being important. As internet gets better,
I think the hardware will be important, but I think the question of whose hardware is the most important will have changed, because I think Sony are going to stay very and do what they do in that they're going to make a powerful games console, but in a traditional sense. I think Nintendo have found what is going to make Nintendo for the foreseeable future in the Switch. I mean, even looking back to the Wii, so like 3 consoles ago for them, like they took the chance then of making a considerably less powerful games console, and it paid off. And a bit of a stumble with the Wii U, but the Switch has not stifled Nintendo in the slightest.
The Switch is fantastic.
The Switch is exactly what Nintendo should be doing. Obviously, at some point, it will have to have a power upgrade. It just will.
Then maybe what we're entering, because for a long time, I don't. Nintendo's gone Nintendo, and I don't consider Nintendo part of the same conversation that we talk about PlayStation and Microsoft in. Nintendo make great games, and they have a great console. And if you're into Nintendo, which I very much am, they've got something for you, right?
Yeah.
But they don't feel like they have any interest in competing with the other two anymore. They're happy Nintendoing wherever they are.
And I think to an extent that's going to happen with the other two now as well.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. I wonder if we're going to reach a point where there isn't a comparable experience across all three, kind of, because this generation, certainly at the start, and they're moving exclusives out of the equation slightly. The Xbox and the PlayStation is fundamentally giving you the same thing.
Pretty much, yeah.
And if Microsoft do double down hard on subscription, streaming, that kind of thing, and Sony continue to avoid it somewhat, it could be very interesting to see as this generation goes on where that leaves both companies. Like,
I mean,
do Sony need to shift the kind, like, because last week we talked about the variety of gaming and how Sony has a style, and there's variety within that style, of course.
Yeah,
but that the narrative heavy one-off purchase game, let's call it that.
No, I get
it. Is there another generation of them? Has the video game industry got another generation of them in it?
I think yes, because I think again when we were discussing Microsoft's studios last week, you look at realistically, you got 343, you got the Coalition. They're the only two mega studios as it stands, because we have no idea what the Initiative is doing. It's in theory meant to be a quadruple A studio, but obviously we don't know until they've delivered something, so we'll just leave them to one side for now. I think Obsidian have proven that they are probably now the third arm of the mega studios, or they certainly will be by the time a couple more games roll out. To the extent that I think maybe if Halo dies on its arse again this time, they might repurpose Halo and see if Obsidian have a crack at it. in a different genre.
I
I don't think it will be a first-person shooter. I think it will be like, let's take a break from Halo as it is, but let's still have a game that we can play.
I personally wouldn't want to see that, only because I want them to carry on letting Obsidian make their own IPs and make their own and playing their own worlds.
I don't necessarily want to see it. I agree with you there, but I think it might be an option that they potentially get forced to, like, and it won't be the worst thing in the world if it does happen. Like,
bringing us back on track slightly, because this is meant to be discussing the event, and we've gone off on a bit of a tangent.
A little bit.
Halo.
Yeah, going into Halo.
More controversial than I was expecting, and I don't quite get it myself.
I know
it looked fine.
It looked fine, and I think that's the problem. Like, I rewatched the showcase yesterday, admittedly through Jim Sterling, so I could hear his reactions to it. And I watched the Kind of Funny Xcast this morning for a little more research for our own discussion, and I can see why some were disappointed. I can't see why they'd be angry. I think that's just ridiculous. But then again, I think that's fandom nowadays.
I mean,
with the Star Wars reactions and stuff like that.
It was Halo looking like Halo.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like Halo, and it looked like the Halo that people were moaning they didn't get in Halo 4 and Halo 5.
Yeah.
And so they've given you a Halo that looks like Halo, and
it looks like it plays like Halo.
It looks like it plays like Halo with some quality of life tweaks as well, like the grappling hook.
It's been years since I've played a Halo, but from what I remember, Halo was a floaty shooter.
Halo was a floaty shooter, which always had relatively large environments that didn't necessarily have the most realistic of graphics.
Like there wasn't weight to Halo. Like when you were moving around, shooting, running, gunning, there wasn't a heft, and they shouldn't. Like that suited the franchise.
It also made sense for the character.
Yeah,
because if you think about it, he's a superhuman. He's a 7 foot tall super soldier.
Carrying an assault rifle isn't really going to bother you that much, right?
Well, I mean, it's more things like the jumping and the floatiness that you're on about. But like, it would feel floaty because he would be significantly stronger than we are, and gravity wouldn't necessarily affect him in the same way. And it'd be like moaning that a Superman game didn't feel realistic, or probably more like a Captain America game. But like, it's always been that thing of like, it doesn't feel real, which is what sort of let me down about ODST back in the day, because that was something that I thought, because it was playing normal humans, it shouldn't have quite had the floaty mechanics that Halo has.
And I think the other thing we have let's face, so in regards to Halo not looking as good as people potentially wanted it to look, let's face the slight elephant in the room here. It's a current gen game.
Yeah, it was meant to be a current gen game.
Yeah.
That they've pushed back and pushed back and pushed back, and now are expecting to release it on a next gen. I mean, it's not even shipping with ray tracing apparently. Like that's going to be an update.
It's gonna look better on the Series X. It will, but the fact that I can play it on my 1S kind of says
everything that needs to be said. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think now obviously the name Infinite, and we discussed it, but I don't think we discussed it on camera last week, but we have chatted about it.
Well, we did say it was out open world.
It's open world, and there is an implication that the majority, at least, of that ring will be playable, which is incredible.
Yeah.
Which obviously is going to go some of the way to explaining the level of detail, at least as far as textures and stuff goes, in the game. Because apparently, actually, the version that we saw playing on the showcase wasn't through a Series X. It was through a PC that had Series X-ish specs.
Yeah.
So even then, it's not necessarily a true representation of what we're going to finally see. But again, I think that might have been a mistake from Microsoft to not make sure that it was playing through the specific hardware. There's been a bit of backpedaling in the last
Yeah.
couple of days.
I mean, I watched that Halo video and I left it thinking, you know what, I've not played a Halo in a while. I'd quite like to play a Halo again.
And I felt the same. And this is from a person who, like, doesn't quite have a vendetta against Xbox, but like I'm certainly not keen on Xboxes. And Halo's never done anything for me, and yet I still quite fancied having a dabble at that. Like, and it wasn't. It might be something I get bored of and don't finish. It might be something I get 5 hours into a 200-hour campaign and just put it down. But the fact is that I actually want to play that, and I think that is probably more important for Xbox financials than it is getting a die-hard Halo fan to pick up a Halo, because they're going to pick it up anyway. Like, whereas I am now tempted to, again, assuming xCloud works, or rather when xCloud works, I would be tempted to put my £12 a month down so that I could have a crack at that game, which they wouldn't have had it not tempted me like that.
Yeah.
So I think they've done their job for now. There's lots more to go though.
Well, I said Obsidian was my star of the show. Would you say the same for yourself?
I think I have to. Yeah. I can't honestly say that anything else came even close.
I know you were I know we have different. I know you're very disappointed with Forza. For me, it was a case of
Forza for me. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I was just saying, it's clearly a long way off.
A hell of a long way off.
Yeah,
because it isn't even because it was one of those ones that isn't labelled as coming to Xbox One X or anything like that. Like,
not many games were.
It's 2 years out minimum from launch, not from now, but 2 years out from launch of the Series X, and I almost felt, especially they took the time to very briefly announce that there's some upgrades coming to The Last Horizon, that they should have focused on that, and maybe focused on that, showed how good it's going to look with the upgrades, because it's a beautiful game anyway. But with all the lovely new upgrades, ray tracing, etc., 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 like you'd be able to push on the Xbox Series X. This is a taster of what it's going to look like, and then show the same trailer that they showed for Forza Motorsport, because that at the end of a Forza section, I think would have hit much harder. Whereas as it was something that was recorded in engine, but that doesn't mean anything, because it doesn't mean it was recorded live. It just means that was the software that they were using, and it was beautiful. But the thing is, I don't expect anything less from Forza. Forza has always set the benchmark for fidelity. In certain cases, especially when it comes to the cars, they haven't always necessarily got the backgrounds as solid as other games, but the cars themselves they've always put a very, very detailed focus on, mainly because they really want you to go to town on doing, like, they won the first games to do a proper livery creator, so they want those cars as nice looking as possible, so that you can go in there and make as nice looking liveries as possible. And
is that how it's pronounced? Livery?
Livery, yes.
I thought it was livery.
No, it's livery.
Yeah, another word I can't pronounce.
Another word you've only ever read, I assume.
Yeah.
Makes sense, though, makes sense. But yeah, I felt like it either needed to be repositioned and, as I say, put next to the... I mean, it only needed to be about 90 seconds of a spec-up for Forza Horizon. But 90 seconds of a spec-up Forza Horizon, so that you know that this is coming for launch of the Series X. It's going to look lovely, and then somewhere down the line, that's the future of Forza.
It's weird. I was expecting Microsoft to have more ready for launch than Sony potentially had ready for launch, and that doesn't seem to be
It doesn't, does it?
remotely the case. Like,
Yeah,
I honestly was thinking that we were going to have a much stronger launch lineup from Microsoft. Like, I thought we'd have Halo and Hellblade, and then there'd be something else that was big that'd be like, oh, and we're ready with this as well. And that just doesn't seem to be the case.
Yeah, I mean, like they've got, as you say, they've got Halo and Hellblade, and I think Halo, as always, will do well, and it looks a very playable Halo.
It's
if anything,
a more
it probably looks
even kilter than I was expecting, because we're gonna have Miles Morales from Sony,
yeah,
and there's something else, wasn't there, that was ready for launch from Sony? Or maybe there wasn't.
I think that was the only actual Sony thing. Obviously, you're going to get that Astrobot game bundled in the box.
Yeah,
it's
I guess
it's the tutorial for the new controller, but apparently it is a proper game as opposed to the tutorial that was in the PlayStation 4.
I guess we're really in the position that we've been in last gen as well, where the big game to play at launch is Assassin's Creed.
Well, it'll be Cyberpunk.
Cyberpunk's out significantly earlier than launch window.
It's
it's been delayed again, hasn't it?
It's been delayed again, yeah.
So do you think Cyberpunk just comes out with PS5 and Xbox One copies?
Yeah.
Like, you can go into a shop and you can buy it on any 4.
Oh, no. I don't think it will, because I think the dedicated version is not out until March-ish or something like that.
As that's a software patch, do you think they might just have a disc? Because really, the difference between a PS4 disc and a PS5 disc, or an Xbox One and an Xbox One S disc, I mean, Series X disc, are nothing. The disc's a disc, right?
Well, not necessarily, because obviously on the Xbox side, they've all got 4K Blu-ray drives in them now. So in theory, they can release a 4K multi-layered disc that you can throw everything that you need possible.
Don't see them doing that. As really, all discs are now our installation discs.
Oh yeah, I know, but I mean, like, they still in theory could, if they wanted to, just release one disc for the Xbox, whereas the PlayStation side, it wouldn't necessarily be the same.
For people who are still rocking an Xbox One, you couldn't, as in a launch Xbox One, you couldn't do that.
You couldn't, no.
So we're at the point where it's only next gen that can really take advantage of that, but I don't see games coming on 4K. Over the 5 years of a generation, I can see discs not being a thing anymore by the end of them.
By the end, it probably will be a case that discs will be dead by the end of it. Well, they won't be fully dead. I think there's always going to be a thing for special editions, and I think there's always we live in a land of relative internet privilege, really, in that a good chunk of our country. You've paused. Are you still there, Jim?
Yeah, I'm still here.
All right, you just went static.
I might have just been still.
No,
like
you went
ninja.
fully you went fully static. You went. It wasn't a what do you call it? A Drax moment.
Maybe I'm just that good.
Maybe you are. But yeah, I think, like, again, we live in a land of relative internet privilege. Like, there aren't many areas that have terrible internet speeds in the UK. Like, and most of us don't have data caps, or proper data caps anyway.
Yeah.
So it's not really a case of for us, other than the supermarket topic from last week that we were talking about. For us, really, by the end of the generation, digital makes sense.
Yeah.
Whereas, I think to to bring politics into things, depending on obviously who wins the election in the States in November, their internet issue could even get potentially worse in some areas because of the net neutrality issue and things like that. The Republicans certainly aren't going to push for stronger infrastructure across the whole country because it's not within their ethos. So it could be that even in parts of America, by the end of the next generation, a fully digital gaming experience actually isn't
possible.
Isn't possible. Yeah. So yeah.
So what other games?
Obviously, I've said my biggest disappointment.
Yeah.
Of Forza. Did you have one? Or
my biggest disappointment might be the lack of, for all the talk about 2 years of games on both consoles. The fact that most of it was Series X exclusive, seemingly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which either implies they're going to backpedal on that statement, or they haven't got much coming out for the next 2 years after Halo.
Yeah, I mean, because the implication with Fable is that that's 2 years out. Although it could be that they're playing hedging their bets with that, because Fable could be further along than we expect. Then again, we don't know what the Initiative's doing, so it could be Initiative's game will be before then, and obviously some of the smaller studios as well.
We've got some nice little narrative adventure games announced from studios like Don't Nod.
Yeah,
they seem to have an exclusive on both PlayStation and Xbox.
Yeah,
two different games. Yeah, why not?
Play the game. Yeah, play the game.
We got a sneaky bit of Jack Black singing.
Yeah, I mean, I never played the first Psychonauts.
Neither did I.
I remember reading the reviews when it came out, because when it did come out, I was working in games retail at the time, and part of my job was to read as many reviews as possible and get this, that and the other and get an idea for recommending to customers. So even if I couldn't play a game, then I had a rough idea of what was going on. But yeah, it was one that I never got around to playing.
Double Fine in general is a studio I'm pretty sure I would love a lot of their output, but I don't think I've played much of it.
Yeah, they but then I think they're the Crew Alex of game developers, in that they're perfectly happy exactly where they are. They don't need more money. They don't want more money. They just want to make what they make and do what they do, and as long as they can pay their bills, then who cares? But yeah, it was. Well, I watched it live, and I know you watched it that evening. And I think my initial review was, if you're going to give a scored review, was an 8 out of 10. And I think on hindsight, I'll take it down to a 7, because I think there's certainly some. There's a lot of positives. But I think there's also a bit of backfire that I can understand some of the negative sentiment. I don't necessarily agree with the degree that the negative sentiment's been taken to, but I can understand where it comes from.
See, I don't know what it is, because reveal of a console aside, because Sony had that going for them to build up some hype. I don't see how there was anything about this event that was particularly worse than the PlayStation event. That said, I do think I prefer the PlayStation event. It's a weird one, but
I think the
I think I was expecting them to do better than they did, if you get me.
Yeah, I think one of the things that really got me, I won't push it as far as annoyed, but it was on the edge of annoyed, was the world premiere and then console launch exclusive.
Oh, that's just the game.
No, but it was just over and over and over and over again. Whereas Sony didn't bother putting exclusive on, for some of the games. You had to, it was up to the journalists afterwards to actually speak to Sony.
Yeah, because Sony tries to hide that stuff and Microsoft doesn't. That's the difference. As in, Sony
Like Sony getting
Sony
an
prefers to
exclusive
keep
Bethesda
that.
game.
So Sony likes to keep its business deals hidden. Why Microsoft, I don't think, does. Microsoft's very much upfront with we paid money to get this. Why Sony is like, it's on our console. It's not on theirs.
I mean, it was like they didn't even necessarily point out it was an exclusive of any type. That was the thing. Like it was.
Yeah, because
with some of the games, it was literally like, oh look, here's a game.
I think I prefer Microsoft's just being upfront approach about it. To be fair, but for both companies have got a fair amount of launch window exclusives, it would seem, going in. And thanks for reminding me of the Bethesda game, because that probably is, as in Bethesda, the publisher, not the developer. Yeah. The game from the Dishonored people. And that is a launch window game for PlayStation, so that probably puts PlayStation back on top for me.
Yeah.
Because I love that. I love Arcane.
I think obviously they did very much focus on Game Pass and the power of the Series X, making everything much better. They heavily lent into Series X being the most powerful console ever made. Now, one thing, because we discussed the layout of the showcase last week, so I was correct in that Halo came first. However, I was not correct that it came first because they were going to close on Lockhart. They closed on Fable, and there was no mention whatsoever of Lockhart.
I still don't think it's happening.
I'm more inclined to agree with you. I thought it was going to, and I still think it. I have a feeling it's more likely now that in November we get the Series X, and then at some point next year we get whatever Lockhart is.
Bit like the Switch Lite.
Sort of.
I'm still like every time I see a Switch Lite and in their little tiny boxes, I'm so tempted. I don't need one. I have a Switch, right? And it's very difficult to share. Thing is, if you could share stuff between Switches very easily, if Nintendo made it very easy, I think I would have caved and probably bought a Switch Lite by now, just because I love the size of them, I love the colour of them.
Yeah.
And for a lot of games I play, removable Joy-Cons are neither here nor there.
Yeah.
But because you can't easily share stuff across both, so I should thank Nintendo for making life difficult, because it saved me the money of buying a... that was well off topic.
No, it was off topic, but it was related in a way. I am more inclined to think that Lockhart isn't coming now. Well, not exactly this year. Not coming, but I don't think it's coming this year. I think potentially they are going to go, which is a strange one. Again, unless they have ultimate confidence in xCloud.
Yeah.
Because obviously, if xCloud works, do you really need a less powerful console? Or a digital console?
If xCloud works, is Lockhart really just going to be a Microsoft Google Chrome kind of thing? A little dongle you plug in the HDMI port on your telly?
I think if they were going to
they'd have to, though. If they want to sell xCloud, right, as a way to game, but don't necessarily sell it aside from a Series X, you have to have something to plug into the telly still.
No, I think it'd be apps.
How's your controller linking to the telly?
Yeah, true. Yeah, because I suppose it's not like the Stadia controller that actually has a the Stadia controller talks to Stadia itself, doesn't it?
It doesn't. Still needs a Google Chrome device plugged into the television.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. There's I'm talking like they could get away with a 40-50 quid.
Yeah. Just
dongle,
literally something to talk to the controller. Yeah.
And that runs. It would run the Xbox UI. Just doesn't need any fancy kind of processing power. There's no because there's so many television manufacturers, right? Especially when you get down out of the main big four brands. That if you want everyone to have the ability to be able to play on their television, but not have to buy a Series X, you need to release something that's universally going to work with every television. So we're talking like it's not going to be anything different than a Roku stick or something like that. Just something that's got enough oomph to run a game selection screen, basically. Yeah,
I think again, it's going to depend on like how hard they can. Well, not how hard. How successful they're going to be with getting people to have Game Pass and Game Pass Ultimate. Yeah. Because obviously at the moment you've got every current gen Xbox, you've got whatever the Series X sells, and PC users, and so I again I can't remember whether we discussed this on camera or not, but at $15 a month, if you can get 50 million concurrent memberships, then that's $9 billion a year, which is a staggeringly large amount of money. So in the short term, obviously their aim, realistically, is to get as many people as possible using Game Pass on the outgoing generation, the incoming generation, and on PC.
Hear me out here.
If that doesn't work, I think that's when we see Lockhart. Like if next summer they're like, oh, shit a brick, we aren't getting enough Game Pass subscribers, we need a second cheaper console to come in and sell some units.
Hear me out on this, right?
Yeah, go for it.
Second holiday season of the new generation. This is a wild out there idea, and its chance of happening potentially slim to none.
So when you say second holiday, do you mean
next Christmas? Not Christmas coming. Christmas.
So no, I meant like 2021, or do you mean 2022, being that like the new generation launches? No,
I mean
during its first holiday.
I mean 2021.
You mean 2021?
Yeah. Xbox Game Pass bundle.
Yeah.
£150. A dongle for your telly, a controller, and a year's of Game Pass. That is a cheap
with how much console. Controllers cost. I can't see it being 150. I think it'd be 200.
Game Pass works out at £143 over 12 months. So I was basically pricing it as the dongle and the controller are free. Not quite, but as close to.
I think 200, but 200 is like, again,
I feel works, 200 becomes too expensive though.
I suppose it depends on what the other consoles are cost at.
Yeah, but yeah, this is crazy speculation. Anyhow, so back to Fable.
Obviously, just a teaser. No one really knows how far away it is, but it's nice that it's confirmed.
Yeah,
I was never really a big Fable guy, but I appreciated the ideas of it. I like the idea. I do like that it will, in theory, be a lighter game. That it might still be an adult-ish game that might have swears and all sorts of things, but it might be a lighter game, a bit of fun.
And the thing is,
there's so many serious games out there at the moment.
And if you've got Obsidian delivering your serious fantasy RPG, you can quite happily have Fable be a laugh.
A comedy.
Yeah.
And again, as we said, they'll deliver a fantastic open world. At least the world building will be beautiful. I wonder if they're working by themselves.
Yeah.
Strictly speaking, to do everything else. Because as far as I know, this is the first non-car game that they've made. Because I think the studio as a whole is actually made up of old people from different like, because I think it's some of them are the old PGR team, and some of them used to work for Codemasters, and so they've literally all come from car making backgrounds. So even before Playground Games became Playground Games, they weren't necessarily making anything but car games. So so I think that was one thing actually I noticed, and I tweeted it out, with that map thing that they kept doing in the thing, in the showcase.
Oh yeah, that was quite cool.
I like that. How many British-based studios there are?
Yeah,
and that was just on that one, and that was really nice. Like, that was cool. So, in theory, Playground Games do have the very local talent that could come and lend them a hand, and say, actually, oh yeah, we can do this and we can do that. It could even be a case of, for mocaps and stuff like that, they don't necessarily have to get a mocap studio built into Playground Games' studio.
Yeah,
they could say they could send their actors to the Hellblade team. And get it recorded there instead. So
I mean, if it's Fable gonna be traditional Fable, I would hope it'd be a bit more on the cartoony side.
I think it'll have a cartoony
well,
skin,
yeah.
but I think we come to expect better voice acting and with that lip syncing, because that was one of the things that some of the lower end studios, like the not Life is Strange but the Life is Strange team, like the lip syncing on that video was terrible. Like, it was absolutely awful. And it's so as nice as it looked and as well acted as the voices were, it was like watching a badly dubbed like martial arts movie at times. So I think for how much they probably hope Fable will sell, it needs to have high quality mocap hiding underneath some nice cartoony skins. Right. I think we're coming close to an end.
Yes,
unless there was anything.
Going to ask you what you've been playing, which is our usual end of the
episode.
Yeah, I'm going to guess. Let me guess.
Go on.
Gran Turismo.
Correct. Gran Turismo Sport. Since last week, I've had 2 more race wins. I didn't manage to get any pole positions last week. Wasn't going to get any pole positions last week. I just wasn't fast enough. I'm not a hot lap guy, so it wasn't going to happen. But yeah, I got a couple of. I got 3 wins last week, so I'm up to 32 wins in my entire playtime, which is since day 1 of the game coming out. But since I decided to try and get the platinum, that's gone up from 16 to 32. So I've actually doubled my race wins in 2.5 months, maybe 2 months, which is pretty good. Then other than that, tried to do a bit more on the Spider-Man DLC because we haven't finished that yet. I remembered why I hadn't finished it, because I went straight in and it was one of the the warehouse beat everyone up missions. Yeah. In the second DLC, they are particularly hard. So I didn't really want to drop the difficulty level. So it was a case of persistent. And of course, it is a game really that if you're a bit rusty on the controls, going straight into a situation like that,
isn't ideal.
Yeah, so it took me about 3 hours to take down one of those things. But now I'm not so rusty, so I'll be able to crack on with that. How about you?
I've not played much since we last spoke. I have had a slight dabble in a game from Devolver Digital called Carrion. Imagine the Thing, as in the film.
Yep.
But you play the Thing.
Oh. Interesting.
You play this creature that breaks out of a lab, and you've got to go through the lab, and you get to eat the army soldiers and stuff and the scientists that are running away from you, screaming in terror. I'm only talking. I've played 40 minutes of it, but fun. I'll play more. It's a side-scrolling kind of game.
That does sound fun. I don't know what I'm going to play
on Game
next.
Pass. Why we're
Well, yeah, of course, yeah. Well, as I say, I think to finish everything off, my conclusions from the showcase and my current feelings towards the next generation, it's definitely going to be PlayStation 5 first for me. I don't think Microsoft has done anything to convince me that I want a console. However, they have done plenty to convince me.
Yeah.
With the caveat of xCloud has to work and work well. If and when that does work, I will be a Game Pass Ultimate subscriber, probably on a semi-permanent basis.
Yeah. I still want both, I think, at some point. However, and that although I also that is with a caveat on Game Pass to a certain extent, and xCloud, if it becomes a point where there is no reason buying the second console, there's no real benefits to it, I probably wouldn't. But I do think it's going to be a PS5 around launch for me, unless if Microsoft do something truly stupid and come out and be like, "Hey, the Xbox is £300 as opposed to Sony's £500." Which I don't expect them to do, but if they did, I might be going, I could save £200 and wait for a Sony price drop.
I could see one of two things happening with the Series X launch as far as price goes. They either go outrageously cheap, deliberately lose money on it, and it would be a lot of money.
Thing is, if they do that, it will force Sony to price, not necessarily steeply, but force Sony to price drop quicker as well.
Quicker, yeah. But I think they. So I think if they do that, there's that. Or as they really want people to get Game Pass, I think it's more likely that they go somewhere in between the two Sony consoles. So assuming that. Assuming that the digital version of the PlayStation goes out at 400 and the disc version goes out at 500, I could see the Series X launching 450 and above, but you might get as much as a year of Game Pass included in it.
Yeah.
Because then it gives people that, not just a taste, but it makes them fully embrace Game Pass, so that when that 12 months runs out, they'll be scared to not have Game Pass.
Yeah.
So it would be that added value of going, well, actually, yeah, sure, we're going to have to charge you $500, but we're going to give you $150 worth of Game Pass with it. Hell, even if they just did 6 months. If they did 6 months and then made sure that on month 7, so that would be, June next year. So on month 7 there was going to be a killer second game coming out. So that whoever adopted, because they don't even need to do it for the full time. It could be whoever gets it in November and December gets 6 months of Game Pass. Everyone after November and December doesn't get 6 months of Game Pass.
Yeah.
So those early adopters, happy days.
We'll see, as neither company has announced console prices yet. But is
that then
a wrap?
I think that's a wrap. Thanks very much for watching, everyone, and we will see you as soon as we have something worth talking about. To be honest, we'll probably wait for the next major console showcase or something like that.
However, we have got coming soon a film podcast.
Yep.
Which we will reveal more closer to the time it launches.
Yep. Until then, thanks very much. See you again soon. Bye.